Welcome to Finding Contentment, the official podcast of the American Institute of Stress. The goal of this podcast is to explore the science, psychology, and practical wisdom that can help us manage our stress. If you are looking for personal growth and professional success, or just want a more fulfilling life, visit us at stress.org. And now here is the host and executive director of the American Institute of Stress, Will Heckman.
Hey, greetings, everyone. This is your host, Executive Director for the American Institute of Stress, Will Heckman. Thank you, everybody, for joining us again on Finding Contentment, the official podcast of the American Institute of Stress. I want to ask everyone who's listening to the podcast to make sure you go to stress.org, check out all the things we have to offer. There's a lot, but make sure you sign up and subscribe to our magazines. They're absolutely free. And while we're talking to subscribing things, I'm going to ask you to hit that like and subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube. It helps us grow our channel, and I really appreciate that. It gets our word out, helps a lot of people. Also, make sure you stay tuned because we're going to be giving out a code to our listeners during this podcast, and that is going to help you get a big discount off of membership to AIS. So make sure you stay tuned. I invited a very special guest today. His name is Aaron Solly. He is a mental wellness coach. He's best-selling Amazon author, Engage, Connect, and Grow. You can find that book, of course, like everything else on Amazon. And he's also a mental health advocate. He's a father of two amazing boys and a husband, as he likes to describe himself. But at age 37, he found himself overwhelmed in a deep depression in the basement of his townhouse that he owned at the time. He was working in the financial services, and that industry will make you feel stressed out no matter what you do. But he was so stressed out. He was not happy with his career. His first marriage was unfortunately falling apart, and his first son was only 2 years old. Sound familiar to a lot of us? Yeah. His world felt like it was falling around all around him, falling down all around him. And that day, he decided to shift his perspective from why is this happening to me to what is this for? So in 2017, Aaron founded Engage Coaching Group. It's an organization that focuses on helping professional men who are over 30 and struggling with their career and relationship challenges. There's a lot of people out there who are doing just that. And if you're one of them, you need to listen to this podcast. He guides his clients through a 3-step process, which helps them master how to thrive within their personal, professional, and of course, their family life. Look, to find out more, you need to go to engagecoachinggroup.com. I'll put it down below so you can see that. And we're going to be talking about a lot of different things. So please join me in welcoming our guest, Aaron Solly. Aaron, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks so much for having me, Will. Appreciate it.
I was looking at your book and read a bunch of things. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, because there's a lot of misconceptions. And they're pretty common. I hear them all the time being in the stress business. But there's a lot of misconceptions about coping with stress. And I was wondering if you could address just those to start out with.
For sure, yeah. Some of the ones that I've, experienced myself, but also, hear from others is just to push through it. So the stress is there and just keep pushing through it, and that's one way to cope with it. Others are that it's okay to be stressed for long periods of time. So it's just part of the career that you're in. I know when I mentioned I was in the financial services industry there, like some industries, it becomes the norm, and it's like, oh, this is just the way it is. And it's definitely a misconception that it's not a healthy thing to be practicing, because that amount of stress in your body, we're not made to be stressed out 100% of the time, or high percentage of the time.
You're right. You're right on a couple of levels. One is that we're not made that way. AIS, we produced a documentary called Mismatch. Our bodies have not caught up to our life. Our bodies are still 10,000 years old in evolution. So we're waiting for that saber-toothed tiger to come in and, get scare us and then go away. We're not used to emails. Our amygdala is sounding off all the time, and that's you're right. And you're very right about the number one misconception of, well, it's just part of life. No, guys, no. Really, it doesn't have to be like that. And you went through a little bit of hell finding that out. I know the finance industry. I worked in Wall Street as a kid, not as a trader or anything, just one of the auxiliary professions there. And I saw guys just burn out, which I'm assuming is what you felt.
Definitely. Yeah. That moment of you mentioned in my bio there at 37, I was at that point where it was becoming way too much, and I had been coping with it in unhealthy ways, and it was hitting really hitting me hard. And plus dealing with the breakdown of my first marriage there, just accelerated the process for me to recognize, okay, this is not working. I need to look at this differently.
And you probably, don't even know half of what's going on. We just sort of accept it. Excuse me. At AIS, we have some really good tools for assessing, what your stressors are.
Nice.
And there's the SMQ and the RSP. They're really cheap to take. And let me tell you something. You'll be surprised what they are. I've had some psychologists take it and say I was totally off what I thought my stressors are. And if I had a long enough time, I'd tell you stories about how guys who thought it was money and it was actually standing in line. I mean, it was totally different. It's in your opinion, you're in your career. Mm-hmm. You go along day after day. But you're not really aware of what your stressors are. It's just you're living your life. What role does being self-aware of our stress triggers really play in being able to develop a coping mechanism that's effective? I'm sure you had to eventually develop some.
Oh, it's huge. Self-awareness is so important. It's the difference of being proactive versus reactive. Because when we're in those stressful experiences, in that sometimes we can't see our way out of it, and we're not self-aware at all. We're just trying to deal with what's coming at us, in the moment, and to be able to step back and really take a few steps back, kind of mentally, and look at what the reality is. Starts the proactive process to look at, okay, that there is an opportunity to do something differently. And that's what, when you mentioned when I was at that point where I thought, this is, why is this happening to me? And to be able to then say, no, what is this for? To be able to shift that perspective. And that really helps with the self-awareness pieces. Hey, there's another way that I can cope through this, that I can deal with this. And once you're aware of just even that recognition, then you can start to take steps forward to make more healthy choices, for sure.
Well, I mean, how do we cultivate that? How do we make ourselves more self-aware of what's going on? That's, hey, this is bad. This is not good. This is not normal. Or at least not the way it should be.
Yeah. Part of it is not being hard on ourselves and just being open to just practicing. So like for me, if I'm stressed out, I'm gonna, others might relate to this. I'll start eating, junk food, chocolate will be my go-to, or potato chips or something salty. And it's a practice of recognizing that moment of where I want to go have something unhealthy to eat, let's say, because I'm stressed out. I'm just going to go eat something. It's practicing in that moment. Okay, I'm just going to have a drink of water, right? Or I'm going to go for a walk. I can do something healthy versus something that I know, sure, it's going to, in that instant, it's going to satisfy me, but it's not going to help me long term. But it's also about, if I do have that chocolate bar or bag of potato chips or what have you, that I'm not being hard on myself. I'm like, okay, I did it again, but next time let's make the healthy choice and actually plan to have some healthy choices laid out. But when I'm not stressed out, okay, these are the healthy choices I want to make, and to be able to not have to make those choices in the moment, but know, okay, these are my options, that if I do have a stressful moment, these are some different decisions I can make. I can just focus on my breathing. I can just, go for a walk, or have something healthier. Choose a healthier choice. Have some fruit. Have something that's going to be beneficial to me physically and mentally over the long run. And it's those moments of just practicing. And the more that you practice, just like anything, you're going to get better at it.
And that was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. It's funny that you brought it up, the unhealthy ways that we deal with stress. I mean, sometimes, yeah, the unhealthy ways are easy, and you grab, like, okay, ruining your diet is definitely, for guys, it's a go-to. I don't, it seems to be a running theme. But I don't know, because everyone is different. Everyone, you and I, going through the same exact situation, we're going to feel that stress differently.
Yeah.
And what impacts us in order to be able to cope with that stress is going to be different for you and I. But explain to people, just so they know, that if they are choosing the unhealthy ways of coping, and I don't mean drinking a bottle of tequila. That's not going to ever do you any good.
No, right.
It's going to kill you. But just normal unhealthy things like, diet or whatever. Explain to people the long-term effects of constantly picking the wrong coping mechanism for dealing with your stress.
Yeah, well, and those that may be experiencing that they may recognize that the stress doesn't go away, right? That it seems to constantly be there. It affects your mood, so you may be more irritable. You may, get more arguments with your partner or people at work. Everything seems to, your mindset just seems to be focused on negativity. You go for a checkup with your doctor, and there's things that you need to work on. Your cholesterol's high, or things that are impacting your health. And so there's things that you can start to experience over the long term that it may seem like in the short term it's okay, but over the long term you're going to have these factors. And for me, it actually led to depression. So it affected more my mental health, because I growing up, I was more of a kind of a shy guy. I kind of kept things to myself. I didn't express myself very well. And the one thing that happened for me is I saw various therapists throughout my adult years, and I kept going to psychologists, counselors, and different people. And there's finally this counselor that I saw that asked me, do you know what depression is? Because I come to her with depression. Do you know another way to look at depression? And I said, well, it's just feeling down. And for me, it's like this gray cloud is hanging over my head, and it's just everything seems dark. And she said, well, that's true. Definitely that could be a way to look at it. But she said another way to look at it is it's anger turned inward. And that just that blew me away, because for me, I struggled with anger. I thought anger was a bad thing. I never expressed anger. I kept it to myself. And so when I was stressed out, I was actually, all these frustrations, all these little things I was keeping them inside of me and not knowing how to deal with them. So that was, for me, was a long-term unhealthy way of coping with stress, because it led to these depressed times in my life. Like when I was 37, when you mentioned at the beginning there, that and not knowing how to express that anger in a healthy way, that it's not a bad thing. You want to be able to express it in a way that's not going to harm somebody, but you there's benefits of working through it and feeling it on the other side, so that you can not just have it, building up inside, right? And for some, it can lead to even like heart attacks and other health issues too. So,
Well, we know because of statistics have showed us a couple of things. One is that 75% of doctor visits, and I've heard a bigger number than that, are directly related to unmanaged stress
right.
and chronic stress. And, the first time I heard that number, I was thinking, 75%, that's a lot. That's a big number. It shows you the importance of being able to manage the things that are going around you that are triggering that stress. Yeah, anxiety happens, depression happens. I mean, a lot of things happen, and they all begin with unmanaged stress, especially for guys at work. That seems to be the nursery, I want to say, for that unhealthy tree of stress growing, and so because I think in men more so than women, although I'm not so sure it's true anymore, but it's higher up on the list of how we define ourselves, what we do. So
Definitely,
I think that when you're working in the business you were in, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure that comes down and brings all the rest of your life down with you.
Oh yeah, and becoming a parent, adding that to the mix, and the financial stress is yeah.
Yeah, and you had a 2-year-old at the time.
Yeah.
It's a great age if everything else is going along smooth. But it can be a daunting task if everything else is not going along smoothly. I seem to remember when my daughter was 2. It's been so long, but I did enjoy most of it. I also wanted to talk to you about you coach people in business settings as well as personally, right?
Primarily, a lot of them come to me for personal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that because I've talked to stress coaches before, and certainly psychologists and neurologists, it's who we deal with, and they talk about the importance of having a support network. And you talked a little bit about that when you were a kid, you were a shy kid and mostly by yourself and didn't really have a way of, I guess, expressing those things that were stressing you. How can individuals identify and nurture supportive relationships? Because not all of them are. How do you develop those kinds of support networks?
Yeah, it's it can take some building some trust, and it can start with just one person that you trust, that you can go to, that's going to be there, that's going to be positive and supportive, and not looking to buy into maybe the story that's going on or the situation, but really just be there to listen, and not trying to solve things necessarily, but be there. You can talk to and just kind of sometimes just get things off your chest. And then it can expand to there where there's all different types of support groups that are available now these days online. You can find them, or in your communities. But it's amazing. And that's what happened to me when I was 37 there, is I started to see a therapist to start, but then I did get access to a group, and that helped shift me as well, because I started to hear from others and their story, even though it's different from mine. There's aspects of it that's similar, and when sometimes just sitting in a circle with people and having them talk and tell their story, you're like, okay, I'm not alone, right? Others are going through this as well, and so that can be hugely beneficial. And I know that some some organizations, I don't know if it's similar in the States, but in Canada, so the companies will have access to different resources. So people can, through their benefits that they get through work, they can get access to different support, whether it's individual or a group support in that. So there's all kinds of different ways. And I've always found that just hearing from somebody that's gone through it, and that may be why a lot of men come to me for help, is because they can relate to some of the things that I've gone through in their story. And there's a bit of building the trust is there in some ways, because there's a relation around a high stress work environment or going through a marriage breakdown, and that can definitely help in finding someone that's gone through something that's similar to what you've gone through.
You think people are hesitant to do that because it's kind of like a stigma attached to it?
I think it's gotten a lot better. Like when I first saw my first therapist, I didn't tell anybody. It was a secret. Only the girlfriend that I had at the time knew, but my friends didn't know, my family didn't know, because back in the 90s, you didn't really tell people that you were going to a therapist. But what I've and I continued to see therapists because I recognize the benefit of getting help, and so I started to utilize that as I got older. But it's maybe in the last 5 to 7 years, I feel that social media has actually helped a lot with getting the word out there and helping people that are dealing with stress and other mental health challenges. And so the conversation's definitely happening more, and I find that more men are actually talking about challenges they're having, and they're more open to getting help. And so I think it's definitely, we've seen a big shift in that. Definitely there's still some challenges, and not everybody may feeling as open to being able to share what's going on from them. But I do think that more and more are, which helps those that aren't feeling comfortable to, at least read a book, find a self-help book, listen to a podcast, start to learn that others are going through similar things in that.
That's one of the reasons we do this show. I really want people to understand that you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're right. People can feel that they are alone in this, and you're not. A lot of people are going through similar things. It's different for everybody how they get through it, but they're going through it. And I agree with you. I think some of that stigma is slowly going away. And thankfully, I think some of it has to do with younger people are realizing that they can talk to each other about things, where guys in my generation did not. So It might be generational.
Yeah.
But it is going away. And I think you can always find, like Aaron said, a group to speak to, certainly an individual to speak to. But yeah, like he said, sometimes at work there's EAP, an employment assistance program that you can connect with, and there are people trained there to help you. And sometimes they have a really good insight, especially if your biggest stressor is work. That's a good place to first start out. And also having a bunch of good friends helps too, but
Yeah.
you don't always want to share those things with friends. Sometimes it's much better to be sitting in a group of strangers, because they don't know me, and I'm allowed to talk about those things that are really going on, and then walk out of the door, and you know what I mean, and go live my life. So those are really good points. In your book, by the way, it's Engage, Connect, and Grow. You write about something that I personally think is a great stress management tool. I've always thought it was, and I've encouraged other people to do it. It's not for everybody, because not everybody can do it, but you don't have to be really good at it. Okay. And you talk about journaling, writing, just writing about your day. You don't have to, you don't have to be Hemingway. What are some other evidence-based techniques or practices that individual people can incorporate into their daily routine to help them reduce those stress levels. Maybe
Yeah,
build up the resilience.
for sure. Just to touch on journaling, because it was something that I started doing in more and more in university, and I just kind of just from my own experience of just writing out, like I recognized that I was writing out a lot of stuff that I was angry about because I didn't know how to express it, and it wasn't until later on when that counselor actually brought up, like probably 10, 12 years later, when the counselor brought up that it was anger potentially that was inside of me. That so I was starting to kind of test out and do different things without even realizing it before that. But there's actual research on journaling that shows, because I mentioned in my book that Dr. James Penbaker, he's a psychologist, and he created expressive writing, which essentially is using journaling as a way to help with healing mental health challenges. And his research found that it strengthens immune cells. It helps with mood. It helps in all these areas that not just with mental health. Like it actually helps with your immune system. And so I do talk a lot about journaling. And then there's other things that that are well known to people as well. So exercise is something that I know that sometimes it can be it can feel like it's, and I still have challenges with it today. Is okay, got to get up and go do some exercise in that. But what I recognize is that it does help, and it could be just a 10-minute walk. It doesn't have to be a full-blown 60-90-minute workout at the gym. That can be kind of the goal to get to if you want to get there. But exercise can just start off with walking. Lately, I've actually been using resistance bands. So I have a young family, and I just need something to be able to do a quick workout. And it's amazing, using resistance bands and doing 100 arm curls and doing that, it takes about 5 to 7 minutes. And if I do that for, I've been doing it since January, and I'm actually seeing results from it. So it doesn't have to be this, exercise doesn't have to be this big animal that you have to lift. It can be something simple and easy. So exercise is something that I know there's lots of research around that. Meditation is something that I've tried different types of meditation over the years. I find that guided meditation works best for me. So a lot of these tools, it really depends on the individual and what feels comfortable for you, because there's all these different things out there, and it just has to be the right tool in your toolbox for yourself to help you.
All those things are right on. I'm a big believer in exercise. The problem I found that a lot of people have with exercise, they think it's boring. Mm-hmm. So my advice is go find a sport that you like to do and then exercise to get better at the sport. I was an athlete. I just started. I'm back in the gym. One of the researching benders I went on about aging is that doing resistance exercise is really important the older you get. So don't think that, as you reach 50 and 60 and on, that you shouldn't be lifting weights or you should. There's nothing you can't do. Make sure you're healthy enough to do it, and make sure. But those resistance bands that you had, they've worked wonders on doing physical therapy for me. Mm-hmm. So they're really good to do. But I also agree with you that just going for a walk is nice.
Yeah.
On many levels. So yeah, you did. And the meditation thing, I used to think, okay, you have to be a certain kind of person to meditate, and how many people are actually doing it? And then I was speaking to some young people in their 20s, and they all meditate. I was like, wow, that's great. You guys really do it. Yeah, they really do it. And I thought that that was just outstanding, that people are making it part of their culture and part of their life. So these are all things that you can do.
Yeah.
You've heard me say this before on this show, guys. There's a lot of things you can do. The only thing you shouldn't do is nothing, because then nothing will change. All right. Some of the things that go on, we have no control over. Like, you have no control over your job being sucky, or an event in your life that happens. External crises, car breaks down, could even be an accident. Is there anything we can do to offset those kind of stresses? Or are they the same things?
It's a lot of the same. The more that you're practicing these things that we've talked about on a regular basis, it's going to help you to be able to cope with when a major stressor shows up. If you're eating healthy, if you're getting enough sleep, if you're exercising, you're taking care of yourself, and the one thing that I found, and I work with a lot of my clients on, is just spending some time really getting to know yourself and who, those triggers that show up for you, and being able to confront them and bring that self-awareness and make better choices, and know that, because one of the things that I struggled with for years is worrying about, these scenarios that are going to happen, that, okay, what happens if this happens or that happens, and almost trying to plan for these big life stressors that may show up and how to be prepared for them. And our mind can play these games and make us believe that that's what we're supposed to kind of plan for them, when you can't control everything. And so part of it is doing these practices and getting to a place where being in the present moment and being okay with it, right? And knowing that life is right now. This is, nothing bad is happening. As you talked about, the saber-toothed tiger is not behind me trying to chase me right now. There's nothing, my mind is causing these stories, and these events that are not real, but when those real life stresses happen, you can be able to be better at coping through them, and knowing that it's natural to have stress going through it. If you lose a loved one, or if you lose your job, it doesn't mean that you're going to mask the stress, because it's a reality. It's causing it's a major life event. So part of it is feeling your way through it, and allowing those feelings to show up and not suppress them, because the suppressing of them is what's going to cause, the unhealthy things that can happen down the road, right?
Yeah, I talked to neurologists who say we have somewhere between 70 and 90,000 thoughts a day.
Yeah.
And 75 to 80% of them are negative. So you're not alone. I mean, I'm a warrior ward also. Imagine if you could take half of those and make them positive. How much better you do. So you're right. It's a lot of it is stop listening to that internal dialogue when it starts to get negative. The voices in my head are telling me things are not as good but they really are. Okay. To step outside an individual for a moment, excuse me, I just wanted to get your opinion about, there's a lot of talk right now about quiet quitting and burnout. Where we're recording this at the end of a school year, where teachers are really burnt out, and so are the kids. I was a former teacher, and I know what's going on there, and I know what's going on in corporate America. How can organizations like schools and other corporations promote a culture of well-being? Maybe provide resources to support their employees of coping with stress effectively. What can they do as an entity?
Yeah, I think make investments in them, make it part of the EAP programs that you talked about, or other sub programs that are available to people. And to make it part of the culture is to really embrace, like, if there's individuals in the organization that are advocates for, things related to reducing stress and mental health, and that to provide them with various platforms, whether it's an employee resource group that meets monthly or bi-weekly, and just to have conversations or bring in outside speakers and professionals to come in and help people in these areas, and just keep the conversation going, and especially in the corporate world, having executives and leaders actually tell their story and talk about what the reality is, and not trying to mask over stresses that they have, but be able to share things about themselves. That can help too, because people can recognize that the leaders they're people too. They're going through things,
Right.
and they can help support others in the organization, and schools can do the same for teachers, even for kids and students, and bringing in different organizations and different resources, and really make it part of the curriculum, part of the school year, and having them be able to practice. The more that people can practice these healthy coping strategies on a regular basis, the better they're going to be prepared to be able to handle those stresses when they show up.
When you went through those dark times when you were 37 and falling into depression and feeling that the world is just turned against me, I think we've all been there at one point or another. When you were going through that, you were struggling, do you think one of the reasons that you went through it is because there were you didn't set any boundaries between your personal life and your professional life?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, boundaries were definitely something that I needed to work on.
I hear people talk about that a
Yeah.
lot. I mean, balance and
Yeah.
work and personal life, and particularly in businesses that are just high stress. I don't know of anybody who thinks their job is not high stress.
Mm-hmm.
You ask the guy who makes ice cream and sells it every day, by week 20, he's sick of ice cream. I'm telling you. Never wants to see it again.
Yeah.
But, I wanted to ask you that because I think a lot of people struggle with that balance. And I would love for you to tell us a little bit of how, if you were able to finally find that balance in there. I mean, you basically changed professions completely.
Yeah, I'm definitely a people pleaser, and still in recovery in some ways. It's something that I struggled with. I just wanted to make others happy for so long, and that was either customers or family members or people that I worked with, and that was really a boundary that I needed to learn. Learning how to say no and to use my voice, because I just kind of just complied, and it took me a lot of practice and a lot of awareness around things that were like, I just got really clear on what my values were and what was non-negotiable. Like what are things that are non-negotiable for me? My health is non-negotiable, and other things that would show up that I just knew that, okay, these are things I want to stand for. And one of the things I wanted to stand for was connection. So it wasn't that I didn't want to lose connection from somebody, but I wanted to do it in a way where I was standing for myself and being able to communicate what I needed. And so some of those times were difficult conversations with managers that they had their perspective, and ultimately it gave me an opportunity to understand, okay, is this, I had to do a bit of a bigger reflection on, is this the right place for me? Is this the right, because if my values aren't in alignment with theirs, and the organization as a whole, then maybe, I can now start to reflect on, okay, what is it that I'm more, that's I'm more passionate about, that's more in alignment with who I am. Because it does take some work to, especially if for someone that is prone to people pleasing, is that to recognize that you actually have a voice in the mix, and that what you value and what you believe in can be communicated, and it's just finding the right opportunities to be able to do that. And it is a continual practice. I'm still practicing to this day at being able to stand up for myself, and that's one thing that this misconception I had when I was younger was that I'm just going to have it, by the time I'm in my 40s or 50s, I'll have it all figured out. And life's it's a journey, and we're always learning, right? There's constant learning that's happening.
Well, for someone who's past those years, I'm telling you, I'm still trying to figure it out, and it doesn't always work. I mean, but I think you're right. I think you made a good point, that you had to take care of yourself first. Hey, you're on a plane. What does the stewardess say? Who do you put the oxygen mask on first? Yourself. Yeah. So you can help everybody else. Aaron, it was great. You had a lot to say. Don't forget to look for Aaron's book on Amazon. That's where you can find everything. Where else can they find it? I know you had a website. Can you tell us the website again?
Yeah, engagecoachinggroup.com. And also Engage Coaching Group is on Facebook as well, if you want to go there as well.
I think there are a lot of guys and a lot of women, a lot of people who are going through the struggles that you went through, share the same situations, and can find some answers, some things, some tools. Lastly, what I wanted to ask you, because we're running out of time, but what does Aaron do to cope with stress right now?
Yeah.
Like today, like you're stressed out. I am going to.
So a lot of it is committing to, like a lot of work I do is remote now. So getting up and going for walks at lunch hour or at the end of the day. I can't run like I used to. My knees aren't like as much as I used to. So it's more walking. And I am really trying to meditate more, because I kind of had this belief that meditation, you had to do it a certain way. And what I've learned from hearing others that are so-called professionals in meditation is that there is no right way. Your thoughts are going to show up. It's not like you're always in this peaceful state, that you're going to get thoughts about the day, about the week, about stresses show up, and it's actually part of it. And so just really being open to that. Meditation is, I know when I do it, it helps bring down stressors and that, and just knowing that it's a process. And I read a lot. I listen to a lot of different podcasts as well. And
of course, this one's his favorite. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? You're right. And I'm really glad you found meditation. I mean, it's been around for thousands of years. It must be something to it.
Something to it, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time. You're right. There is no one way to relieve our stress. So if everybody out there is listening, don't forget that stress is different for everyone. And there is no one way to manage that stress, no one tool that's going to help you relieve it. So that means you're going to have to join us next time, because we're going to talk about more tools and techniques. And I'll put that code at the bottom of the screen for you to use, so you can join AIS with a very big discount. And I just want to remind everybody to please join us next time as we explore more stress management strategies and insights. And we hope that everybody has a stress-less day and find contentment. Thank you all.